extremely so. It was like, you know, we came here to moderate, you know, people were a little shy and we didn't have to. We could have left. We would not have been fine.
And well, you guys feel free to reach out to me at any time. My phone line and email are always open. You can get with Michael or Melanie. They both have my contact information. So just feel free to share it with any of your members. And you all can feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm always accessible.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Gabe Escobar has joined us. Editor of the Inquirer. Why don't you come and have a seat and do a brief introduction?
No, I think I'll stand here so people.
Okay, that's even better.
Okay,
that's even better.
Sorry, you can stay where you are. In the space. Maybe lots of room.
You know, Gabe's been editor of the paper of the Inquirer since November 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, it shows that somebody who worked with you at the Daily News back in the late 80s, you and I worked together, right, as reporters. And so Gabe's worked at the Daily News. He spent quite a bit of time at the Washington Post. Were you a reporter there at some point?
Yes, I was a reporter and
definitely an editor. And he's been here and there. And being an editor at this point is not an easy job. There's, you know, you've got to do the news, you got to do all of that, but you also got to be really mindful of the budget.
Yes.
So our goal is not to start out beating up on you. But we'll get there. But you know, you and I talked on the phone about, you know, we've all had to lay off folks. We've all had to lay off folks. Well, y'all can come sit at the table.
People on Zoom.
Or the Zoom. Or in Zoom. We've all had to lay off folks over many, many years. But I think what caught our attention, what attention a lot of folks in our communities, is that the nature of the layoffs now in the midst of the politics of this United States at this point, where DEI has gone off the table. So, you know, you will clarify this. We talked about this in the phone a bit, but you know, I think there were 8 buyouts, and you said to me, well, they weren't really layoffs. And I guess I would say back to you, if you don't take a buyout, it turns into a layoff, doesn't it?
In this case, yes. Okay.
It usually turns into a layoff. So out of the 8 people, 4, I believe, were people of color. And I'm going to leave it at that. You know, Gabe can represent himself, and he's very good at that. But why don't you just jump in? Why don't you take some time and talk a little bit, and then I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions.
Again, I look forward to the questions. And hello, everyone. It's very nice to see all of you. Nice to meet all of you. I know many familiar faces here, actually. Let me begin with a number. Those of you who have been at the Inquirer, who committed to the Inquirer for many years, if you were reading the Inquirer in the 1990s, there were 700 journalists in the newsroom. We are 70% fewer today.
Pardon?
70% fewer. We're at 200. Yeah. Right, so there are many ways to tell the story of what's happened to news organizations like ours. That number is pretty telling, right? The reductions in staffing in news organizations like the Inquirer have been going on for 20 years, right? So in the Inquirer history, the precipitating event was a year after the sale by Knight Ridder, right? A year before I first came to the Inquirer, and I got here in 2007, the Inquirer laid off 60, 70 people. And back then, there was a seniority clause in the contract, which meant that the last hire or the first hire, that wiped out most of the diversity in the newsroom at the Inquirer, right? So, there's a long and sad history that is directly tied to the economics of the news industry. It's not all bleak, actually. The Inquirer had a very, very good year last year in the area that we need to excel in, which is digital subscriptions. This is, in my view, I'm somewhat of a party in it, a really, really good newsroom that has managed over the last few years to transform itself into a digital operation that is still publishing newspapers and still depends on the revenue from newspapers. That's sort of like, you're familiar with this story. You've been around Philadelphia. You know what's happened to the news industry. It is a challenged industry. I think we're meeting the challenge and we're meeting it responsibly, and that is not to say that it is not painful. On the communities and engagement desk, let me provide you some background. Sure. Let me provide you some background. This desk was created a little over 3 years ago, and it was the Inquirer's attempt at adopting a reporting journalistic model that was not of our own invention. It is a kind of discipline, a new way of reporting, a relative term, where the aim is to listen as much as report, understand as much as write or broadcast. It's actually a healthy pivot in journalism, and I think on the whole, it's been a good thing for journalism. The Inquirer created this desk to essentially explore that model in reporting. It was a 6-person desk with 2 editors. One of the editors was an engagement editor, a new function in the newsroom, right? The mission of an engagement editor is essentially to venture out, get to know communities, establish a conversation, not necessarily always with the intent of producing stories. It's the engagement part that is of value. Part of the Communities and Engagement Desk was the creation of the Soapbox Salon. And this was a deliberate attempt at creating a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue with members of the community. I think at its height, maybe more than 40 people, and they met regularly with the Communities and Engagement Desk. And again, not with the end result being we are writing this story. The end result was really establishing a method of communicating with regularity so that the newsroom would be more familiar with the issues faced by the communities represented. We'd all agree this was a noble goal, right? We ran it for 3 years. An honest assessment, and this is my assessment, is that it did good work. I think at its best, it exposed the greater Inquirer newsroom to a new kind of reporting. It brought into the newsroom the voices of community leaders who met with the Communities and Engagement Desk. Sustaining this experiment did not seem possible beginning last year because we were facing a reduction in the size of the newsroom. And I'll get into that in a bit. At the turn of the year, meaning the beginning of 2024, we knew we had to reduce staffing so, and this is really important, so that we can invest in other areas. And that, what I've just described, pretty much defines what has happened in the last 5 years. In 2019, the newsroom had 250 people. It's at 200 now. We're 50 fewer, but in the last 5 years, we've also hired. So there are many, many people in the newsroom who have arrived in the last 5 years. What I'm describing essentially is a process, an ongoing process where we re-engineer the newsroom. We shrink in some areas, we grow in other areas. Those of you who worked at the Inquirer, and I know there are some of you here, 25 years ago, the nighttime operation of the Inquirer, if you would go, either on Broad Street or even, at 800 Market, at this time, it would be the busiest time in the newsroom, actually. The whole room would be full. The night desk had 60, 70, 80 people. We're under 20 now on the night desk. That part dramatically reduced. We are at the bare minimum in staffing to produce essentially the two newspapers, the Inquirer and the Daily News.
Recording in progress.
Bare minimum. A lot of other things have changed that make us more efficient. We have a new system for laying out the newspaper that allows, one person to do the work of 3 or 4. It is that seamless. It is that quick. Technology has helped us, but regardless, that part has really shrunk. There are parts of the newsroom that didn't exist before that are now fully staffed. We have an audience and programming team. We have a video team. We have one of the largest desks in the newsroom is the breaking news desk, which operates all day. So again, we shrink, we invest in some areas. That's what happened beginning in 2024. We knew we had to reduce staffing. We knew that the experiment in the communities and engagement desk was not going to survive the cuts. This was all communicated through formal channels to the News Guild. They knew it beginning in March of 2024 that the communities and engagement desk would be sunsetting as early as last spring. We delayed for various reasons. We were going to do it in September. We decided September was too close to the election. We were going to do it at the beginning of the year. We had the Super Bowl. We had the fire. We had the plane crash. So we decided in March. That timeline that I've just outlined to you, should dispel any linking of the end of the communities and engagement desk with what has happened since the new administration took over in January. It had nothing to do with that.
But should you have thought about that, given what happened in March today, up in his cronies? Would that have been a reason to rethink getting to this address?
No, because of the importance of the investment that we knew we had to make. We had to reduce, and that was the target for the reduction. Yes.
What were you going to invest in? I mean, you said that you had to reduce staff to make improvements in other areas. What is the area that?
Yes, and this is an important thing to discuss. We have to succeed as a business. The journalism will not survive if we do not succeed as a business. It's plain and simple. The size of the newsroom is directly related to the revenue that the company generates, right? So this is a business It has to thrive as a business. It has to succeed as a business. There are areas of investments that we defined in the last year and a half that require resources. We've invested heavily in food and the food vertical. If you read the Inquirer online, you can see how that digital strategy is a reinvention of that kind of coverage. We have invested in sports. We're investing in a weekend strategy where we're staffing up Saturday and Sunday. We realize that for our digital audience, the Inquirer online is really a Monday through Friday publication because staffing on Saturdays and Sundays is minimal, right? Again, those of you familiar with the Inquirer, in its heyday at print, Saturday and Sunday was always minimal staffing. I joke that the worst thing that could happen on a Friday night when the Sunday editor, who was all powerful at the Inquirer, right? The Sunday editor was in charge of producing the most important paper of the week, and the Inquirer in the 90s and maybe even to the early 2000s was one of the largest Sunday newspapers, physically speaking, in the entire country. There was an entire production to produce the Sunday newspaper, and the editor in charge went to bed Friday night knowing that the paper was decided. The last thing you wanted was somebody to mess with paper. And Saturday and Sunday staffing was minimal staffing by design. In the digital age, that doesn't make any sense. We need to provide our readers live coverage, comprehensive coverage, different coverage on Saturday and Sunday. We need to be a 7-day-a-week digital publication, and we're investing in that. We're conducting other experiments, again, all to drive our audience so our business succeeds. We're investing in a new experiment to see if we can establish a core readership in suburban communities to see if we can generate subscribers by offering them a free newsletter as an experiment on Thursdays, and we do it as an experiment in Cherry Hill and in Lower Merion. That began, a couple of months ago, and it's shown real promise. And we can grow that and, essentially replicate for the modern age what the Inquirer did so well and so comprehensively in the 80s and 90s with its suburban operation.
On the suburban run, and disclaimer to the room, I'm wearing several hats. I'm an NABJ-Philly member, but I'm also president of the New Jersey Society of Professional Journalists. And to that end, and I'm going to deliver a letter to you that myself and Denise Clay Murray is the Keystone Pro Chapter president. She is also Keystone covers Eastern Pennsylvania and Northeast Pennsylvania. So we are, not to read the entire letter because I won't, and Mr. President, a copy for you.
Thank you, sir.
But we have the same concerns as NABJ-Philly. Oh, can't forget Vice President, not only Bernie, she's Vice President of NABJ-Philly and NJSPJ. We share the concerns with NABJ-Philly, and particularly for my part, because I'm also a New Jersey resident, we're one of the most diverse states in the union. And we view the communities and engagements desk not so much as an experiment, but as a requirement that has been ignored for decades since the Kerner Commission.
Thank you.
So, and I understand, and I don't think anybody in the room is arguing that you have to be a successful business. Like, we're an industry protected by the Constitution, but the Constitution did not necessarily dictate how to make that money. But I believe every media outlet, especially one like the Inquirer, like WHYY where I work, we have an obligation to represent the entire community. And with Philadelphia being a majority Black city and New Jersey being a majority people of color state, it was disappointing, and especially in the last few years, to see the Inquirer kind of step back from what it proclaimed that it wanted to be. So, yeah.
My issue, and as someone who represents journalists here in Philadelphia as well as Pennsylvania, is that when you talk about all of this expansion you're doing, I don't really see it including people who look like me. And I will tell you about my experience applying for a job at the Philadelphia Inquirer. The last time I applied for a job, I had been a contributor to the editorial desk, to the opinion section. I applied for one of your editorial writer openings. I didn't even get the dignity of talking to the editor who was actually hiring for the job when I did the interview. And that was the last time I interviewed for any job or even applied for any job at the Philadelphia Inquirer because of that. This is a long-standing problem. Newspaper diversity within the newspaper has been a long-standing problem. And one of the concerns that we had, and it's expressed in the letter, is the fact that you already have these communities that the community and engagement desk was addressing their issues. And they were already communities that when I would go out and report as a member of the Black press and as an independent journalist, they would tell me point blank that they had no trust in you, in your news organization, or anything that you put out. We believe that by dismantling the communities and engagement desk and calling it an experiment, to me is a bit of an insult. You have sent the wrong message to people who need more information and not less at the absolute wrong time. Because these folks are already have a built-in mistrust of the Philadelphia media ecosystem as a whole. For it to have no trust with the largest participant in that media ecosystem in terms of the written word is bad news, especially when there are far too many other digital sources that are willing to give you stuff that if you don't look up to make sure that it's not false, you will believe. So while I understand the whole economics of it, because I myself own a radio and television program called Philadelphia Hall Monitor. We're out of Philly Cam. I had to leave my show to be here to make sure that we were here to talk to you. As an owner, I understand the need to make money, but I also understand that if you wanted to make more money, you could make it right here by turning this group of people who have no trust of your paper because they don't see themselves represented into subscribers by doing the kinds of things that make them want to pick up the paper or go to your website and read it. It's really that simple.
I have a question. I just wanted to know. Want to sit down? Yeah. I have a question.
Someone has a question.
I just want to find out. I'm Renaldo McKenzie. Do you get federal funding from the federal government? You said that cutting the community engagement desk has nothing to do with what's going on with Donald Trump administration in terms of the cuts. But I have a question. The question is, do you get any kind of federal funding from the federal government? Have you gotten it from the past? Are you getting it now? And are you planning, or have your team, the Philadelphia Inquirer, have you guys asked for federal funding from the government recently? That's the question. And then I have a follow-up question. What will your business do to continue to facilitate voices and stories in this community? This community is unique. This community is unlike any other community. This This community started the underground railroad. There is no project with what you're doing, what you have said is unfortunate. You must choose your words wisely. Now, the question is, does the Philadelphia Inquirer, do you get have you ever gotten federal funding? Are you getting it now? Have your team sought any federal funding in the future, or do you plan to do so? And the next question is, what will the business do to continue to facilitate voices and stories in this community? That's it.
We heard the question.
Thanks.
What's the question, sir?
Who is this, first of all?
Who is it?
My name is I'm Renaldo McKenzie, the author of Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, the creator and host of the Neoliberal Round, doctoral student at Georgetown, doctoral student at Temple University, graduate of University of Pennsylvania, and I'm a professor of Caribbean thought and Caribbean history, and do a lot of stuff here in Philadelphia, and I live in Germantown. Thank you.
It's a Black person with a point of view. We don't have to know his background. He has a point of view and he shared it.
I'm just asking who it is.
Okay.
Came out of nowhere, right?
Right. That's the problem. I have a question.
Well,
Could
okay.
You gotta answer the question. Like 4 or 5 questions.
So, at the risk of repeat the question.
I think the first one was, has the Inquirer past, present, or will ask for federal funds?
The Inquirer received federal funding through the pandemic. To recall that there was money offered to companies and news organizations included, and the Inquirer got money from the federal government on a kind of loan. That was a forgivable loan. As far as I'm aware, there's no federal funding at all now. And what I just described was actually aberrant. I don't think it had ever happened before either. And obviously unique circumstances given the pandemic.
Will the Inquirer be asking for funds? Sure. I think that's what he was asking.
No, I can't see a scenario in which we would ask, but, you know, if there's another pandemic, I don't know. I mean, there is no federal funding present, and what I described was aberrant.
And there's been no conversation with Donald Trump's administration, no targeted conversation between yourself and any member of Donald Trump's conversation as it relates to funding and this forgivable loan or anything as it relates to no conversation with Donald Trump conversation.
We got it. We got it.
There have been, yes, no conversations at all. If
Okay.
that is the question.
I wouldn't.
Are we talking to the Trump administration? And is the Trump administration in any way helping, directing, mandating, requiring the Inquirer to do something on its behalf? The answer is a categorical no.
Okay.
You don't know how long that will last. No. And when you look what's happening in this country,
I can tell you right now that
you can't say it's not going to happen.
well, what's not going to
That the Fed said Trump's folks are going to want to chat with not just the Inquirer but other media organizations if they see something they do not like.
and then the
That's happening now in San Francisco with KCBS. They reported on the moves of ICE, and all of a sudden KCBS has a FCC inquiry about their reporting.
Yes, yeah. We are living in unusual times, right? And we don't know and can't predict what will happen over the next few years. All we can do is do our job in the best way possible. And we're not easily intimidated either.
Could you repeat the rationale for the development of the community engagement desk? And the reason I'm asking that, do you think that the problems that you saw that this made you decide that you needed this desk have in any way diminished? Because it seems to me the problems that many in the Black and Brown community are experiencing are growing. So it seems that this is a very strange time to take away that focus on those communities that are struggling in many ways.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. You know, and falling back in light of your very good question on an explanation that devolves into the economics of the industry doesn't seem right either, right? It would be great. It would be ideal if you know, we had the manpower and the resources to comprehensively cover every single community in our region. We can't do that, obviously. Can we do a better job than we have been? Yes. Are we not doing it at all? No.
So what happens to those communities in terms of the information that understand? I read a story in the Tribune about the increase of homelessness among Black men. That's important because that's going to impact housing, is going to impact crime, is going to impact healthcare. I didn't see that in the Inquirer.
It's really important for us to do as thorough a job as possible over time in covering our communities plural. We're never going to be perfect. If you are expecting me to say here today that we will cover every single story and every single story that you deem of importance, and we might agree is of importance, that's not going to happen. Over time, the journalists at the Inquirer, and this is the message I delivered to the newsroom, we have to do the job that the Communities and Engagement Desk did in terms of reaching out and talking to people, making sure that when we report out, we're as thorough and as comprehensive as possible.
So Black subscribers aren't important to you?
What did I say that would lead you to conclude that?
Because in my community, as I talk to people, people say they're proud to say, we don't read the Inquirer. And these are not just poor people, these are professional people. So it seems to me, if I was a corporation, I would say, well, wait a minute, there's something that's happening here. We're losing people. And it seems to me that you're almost saying we don't mind losing those people.
No. You know, we won't succeed if we alienate people.
They're alienated, they are.
Well, we obviously have to do a better job.
Thank you.
Yes.
We can get the kind of coverage we need.
And that's why we're cutting the program.
Makes no sense.
I think you are ahead of me.
Yes. So when you said that, you know, at one point the Communities Engagement Desk was faring very well. So what was it? Were you looking at metrics? Were the subscribers not coming in from that desk? What was it? Was there I'm just assuming there was a certain failure. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say it was a failure. And from the very beginning, the goal was never to use the journalism produced by the desk as a kind of revenue play. In fact, as you know, the Inquirer requires you to subscribe to read the content. That was not the case with the content produced by the Communities Engagement Desk. It was deliberately outside the paywall. It was available to everybody for free. The metrics, the audience was not there for those. Now, we're not always guided by the metrics. There are stories that we do that, you know, we know are not going to, you know, produce huge audiences, but we feel that they're the responsible thing to do. You know, again, we did community-based work through that desk for 3 years. And when we had to assess where we needed to cut, that was where we alighted. I would not say that it failed. You know, I would hope that the journalists in the Inquirer newsroom saw the approaches that the Communities Engagement Desk took and learned from that. I should note, I'm sorry, but I should note that the Soapbox Salon is still living and thriving. It is now part of the community engagement editor in the opinion section, who has done a very, very good job bringing in voices from throughout the community who write and speak in their own voice because they're published in op-eds. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I guess if we can all agree it did such a good job, couldn't there have been just more creative ways to reduce the Inquirer? Like a staff member here, a staff member there, not one entire desk. Maybe reporter there, an administrative person there.
The desk was 6 people. 2 people had left. Those positions were not filled. In many ways, that was an early sign of where this was going, right? 2 people left. They went to other jobs, and those positions were not filled. 2 other people from the desk are still on the staff, just doing other things. So it was down to 3 people.
So one of the longest serving people was also let go. You talked earlier about, usually it's the people that just come in. And I think she was here, 40 years, 45 years.
Yes, she was on.
She had a strong listenership, readership, because she was doing the kind of in-depth stories about legacy and history that are often overlooked in Philadelphia, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in the press.
I have a question.
And to your point,
Let someone else ask. I think we have
Eric had a question.
Oh, no. Louis had his hand up. I'll defer to him.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance. Is the Inquirer, what is the relationship of the Inquirer with the Lenfest Foundation? Is the Inquirer a profit-driven corporation? Is it a mission-driven journalistic? What is the mission of the Inquirer?
It's a good question, and the answer is always a bit complicated. This is what's called a public benefit corporation. What that means is that we are owned by the nonprofit Lenfest Institute. We have 2 boards. We have the Inquirer board. The publisher of the Inquirer reports to the Inquirer board. I report to the publisher. We do not report to the Lenfest Institute. The Inquirer is essentially has to support itself. We get philanthropy money from the Institute, but the Inquirer has to survive as its own business. So the public benefit corporation, the most important aspect of that is that it allows the Institute to raise money on behalf of the Inquirer. This is the philanthropy thing. That's what allows sort of the philanthropy on one side and then essentially a business on the other side. That's why you have 2 boards. And, that's been an important source of revenue for the Inquirer. The Lenfest Institute has it supports local journalism, and that includes obviously the Inquirer, but it is actually supporting local journalism, not only in the region, it funds, some local organizations, but also nationwide. So it has actually a big portfolio.
Yeah. Kind of related to the question about potential government interference, in that nonprofit foundations have a certain vulnerability in terms of 501c3. Do you know if any of the decision making at the Inquirer are related to any pressures that may have come upon the Lenfest Institute?
I can say that the answer is no to that.
How diverse is the editorial board as well as the board of the?
The editorial board, I'd have to do the count. The editor, Rich Jones, is black. There's another black staffer, an editorial writer. There are two Hispanics, and it's a 7-member board.
But there's another board, right? That's the
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the opinion section. I'd have to go back and look at if you're asking specifically, how many black members there are, is that what you're asking on the entire board? There are two.
In fact, I have two questions. One thing that you mentioned was that the reporters who are left on the staff will be called on to cover those communities that the communities and engagement desk covered. Do you have a plan for ensuring that? As someone, and a number of us chose journalists, chose traditional white newspapers because their reporters were not covering those communities. What do you do to ensure that the ones who are left behind, a lot of them are not black, will be covering those communities? How do you make them do it? That's one question. The second question has to do with the newsletters that you mentioned. Are you hiring for those newsletters? Are you hiring people of color to help produce some of those newsletters? So you lay people off. That's a bad thing. That's not a very good thing. But we would also like to know that you are hiring people on the other end.
So on your first question, as I said before, our journalism is not going to be what it should be if we are not much better at covering communities. The communities and engagement desk method, its journalism approach was different, and the result was different. The engagement part of the desk, which really involved going out and spending a lot of time in the community without necessarily a story in mind, that's going to be hard to replicate, I think, right? In all honesty, right? That's going to be hard to replicate. I think when reporters go out into the city and anywhere else for that matter, it's really important that they do their job as comprehensively and as completely as possible. And that includes, getting to know whatever you're writing about, people, an issue, the community itself, as deeply as possible. That's essentially the journalistic mission, and it's something that all our journalists are charged with. The second one, we are writing, we are hiring, and we have objectives for hiring, for diversity in hiring, that we're graded on, and we share openly with the newsroom. We are hiring for the newsletter. We offered one job to a very qualified black candidate who turned it down because he got a much better offer than he was. And we're still looking for people. I think we have 4 jobs open at the moment.
You're looking for organization else to offer. Find those people?
Right. Yes.
And as today and any place else.
And the people that were let go couldn't be integrated into this new selection process.
So the jobs that we're posting now, they're free to apply. There are skills that we know that we need that are part of the job description, and we will hire based on the skills that we need.
Is the assumption that covering the city of Philadelphia is, say, different than covering Cherry Hill? Because as this gentleman said, we act as though the suburbs are all white and the cities are all black. That's just not true. I think most of your journalists actually live in these suburbs.
I don't know. Most of our journalists actually do most of their work in Philadelphia, as you
They
know.
work in Philadelphia, they may not live in.
Yeah, I don't know what the breakdown is.
So what's the diversity breakdown of the newsroom right now? Because the last number that I saw, it was about 75% white.
About Cheryl's here, right? It's about 24% people of color, 14% Black. And I'm talking about the newsroom, right?
1 second. So for the newsroom, it's about 63% white currently. And Black representation is about 12%.
What about Latino?
The rest of
Latino, about 7%.
Mm-hmm.
Asian, about 7%. And then we have about 10% of staff that decline to enter.
Right, so 10% don't identify.
So here's the interesting part. I actually Googled the quick census facts for the city of Philadelphia alone. It's in track with Asian alone 7%, Black alone 40%, white alone 36%. So in a couple of areas, and Latinos 15%. So in a couple of areas, we're almost tracking with the city. I'm glad that the newsroom's not as white as it was 3 or 4 years ago. But at the same time, I'd be concerned considering the number of people in Philadelphia alone that are Black, how that number is still below. And don't get me wrong, I'm in public media. Let me smack my industry for a minute. There's not that many Black people in public media, let alone news radio as a whole. I said that in reverse. WHYY is an anomaly for the number of people of color on its staff, but it's an anomaly. I came from a city where for a year, I was the only Black person in the newsroom on staff in Baltimore. Blackity Black Baltimore. Yeah, Blackity Black Baltimore. I was the only one for like a year. So, in news radio in general, not that many people of color, let alone public media. And KYW, there's a couple of us on the staff. So it's an industry-wide problem. But damn it, someone got to start somewhere.
I agree.
So what's the holdup?
Hiring, right?
So, and this will be my last question. I don't want to monopolize. What does your outreach look like? You mentioned you expressed an interest to reach out to us, but where are you going to Lincoln? Are you going to all the different?
We have actually, Cheryl, you can be good at this because
Yeah,
we have a sophisticated pipeline program, right?
Yeah, so I'm Sherelle, so Director of DEI at the Inquirer. So my biggest priority is like our pipeline development. So that work has been like critical to like building up some of these. So of course we report on our DEI goals every quarter, try to improve on like the gender standpoint, race and ethnicity within that. But as Gabe mentioned, right, one of our key, if we don't hire more people of color, we don't retain more people of color, we're not going to have, an increase within the Inquirer. So a lot of that strategy has been connecting with HBCUs. We went in for class visits. We just attended Howard. We have partnerships with LinkedIn, Morgan State University. So developing that. But what we recognize is that, okay, we're having connections with like some of these universities. And that's great when we're looking for alumni or entry-level positions and some of those things like that. But we do have, we're constantly looking for editors, right? Or, looking at other parts of our business that we need more senior leadership. So that was the issue that I kind of found. I just started in July. My first couple of months here, like, okay, we can do really good at, looking at our internship programs and some of these, but how do we really make some of that outreach? So a lot of that has been reaching out to our Panhellenic Council, a lot of those chapters within the city. So our Divine Nine organizations and also alumni connections. The issue is that many people a few years after graduating aren't staying connected to their university for employment opportunities at that. So we're thinking about partners within the city that we can build on because it's great to start at HBCUs, but we have to go a step further. And then we got to reach alumni too.
I have a question, Stu. How long prior to you starting did the Inquirer have a DEI team or desk or initiative?
Yeah, Gabe probably can speak to this a little bit better than me, and I know Mike Days as well can speak to that. But it exists before I started, and I know our strategy with some of the schools and pipeline development began. But
You're looking at the first one.
he's the first vice president.
And to be honest, I'm lobbying for a staff for quite some time. It's not provided. I was promised a staff. But I took this job, but it was not provided.
That was actually my second question. How is this team and your work supported by the Inquirer?
So, prior to me joining the Inquirer, I understand that this role did function differently. Now it is a part of our people and culture department. So within that, a lot of that work is kind of like a lot of folks might see me doing like the talent space and DEI space as well, kind of like looking into that. So supporting from like that people and culture department, but there is no specific other like DEI role within that. We do have, of course, the DEI committee. We do have our Inquirer, strategy that we're still working at with like that team, but there's no additional DEI roles.
It's been people and culture almost from the beginning. Actually.
Okay. It's been,
And that's one of the reasons why I asked the question.
People and culture.
Part of the challenge with this entire climate and what's happening around DEI is that what I guess what we're saying is that this actually should not be its own standalone thing. It should be built into the DNA of the organization in terms of hiring practice. To go back to what Kenny was saying in terms of equity in relation to the population that you're serving and representing. I'd be interested to see what the historical numbers are for not just the Inquirer, but every organization.
If I could just dumb that down, talking to Black people is not like revolutionary. It should be a regular thing.
Question.
Thank you.
With regard to hiring practices, do you have a panel that hires? Is it a single individual person that hires? And what is the process? How, like, because you just said you've let go of 4 people who were minority people. What's the goal going forward? What's the expectation? Who are you looking to hire? What is the practice? Is it going to be a panel of diverse people who are actually participating in the interview going forward? I mean, has that been happening that way? Do you do panel interviews?
Requirement. You get the new panels to be diverse. That is a requirement.
And you also mentioned that the job is different now. The job descriptions that are put out, because you said the people can actually apply for those jobs if they want. So you let them go and they can apply as external candidates. So do they lose their internal longevity in the application process? Like, how does that work if you apply as an external?
No, it's based on the skills for whatever the particular job is. I think under the news guild, if I'm not mistaken, if you come back to the Inquirer, your whatever years you put in are counted.
They count. Does it count in the interview process? Are you given that?
I'll read through it, but
Yes. Are you given that? As an internal employee, I'm looked at first as opposed to external employees. Is it given that, or is it? There's no. Okay. Just ask.
3 questions. Because I feel like I feel like we're running out of time, but first is, will you also be addressing NABJ in the similar manner as you're addressing NABJ? Yes. Okay. When will that be happening?
We go to the convention in August.
yes, this is a convention. July, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Second, it just feels that from when the Tribune got it, when I covered it last week, just seemed that you were only concerned about subscribers that were more affluent in Lower Merion and Cherry Hill, and that, less affluent subscribers who you were covering with the community's engagement desk don't have the income to be paying for the subscription. How true is that? And what's next? What will the Inquirer be doing to not make it feel like this is a DEI rollback under Trump's administration?
Well, I hope I clarified that this is not a DEI rollback. In fact, the DE&I policies that we have been using are still in play.
I guess what I guess I should re-articulate. What will the Inquirer do to make it not appear that way moving forward?
Do when it comes to E&I, we have established policies, we have established goals that we're adhering to. We have internal policies in the newsroom that guide us. None of that has changed at all.
And then the subscribers.
The subscribers, the newsletter is really a digital play to test out whether newsletters work as a model for driving subscriptions. You know, if they, and as I said, the signs are really good. If it could be that, in 5, 10, months, we'll have more newsletters, and we will have newsletters that would target not only suburban communities like Cherry Hill and Lower Merion, but we may do them for West Philadelphia. We may do them for South Philadelphia. We may do them for Wilmington, Delaware. We may do them for Reading, because the investment, the model there, if you haven't looked at the newsletter, is it's essentially one reporter / editor using a lot of the Inquirer content that is already relevant to different communities, including it in the newsletter, packaging them. We will be experimenting with artificial intelligence generated data that will be able to tell you, okay, and if you're in West Philadelphia, these are the permits that were issued. AI will allow us to do that. So there's both the strategy for now and then the strategic ambition that will follow once we can prove the concept.
Can you guys deliver to Wilmington?
No, but the newsletter is not an actual newsletter. It's all digital.
Yeah, digital. Yeah. So
I say that as a resident of Wilmington.
okay.
And I say as a former,
It did work.
I'm gonna say as a former Trenton resident, I was about to get jealous if I heard that a paper's going to Delaware and you can't even cross from Morrisville.
Let's put some other people in on the conversation. Linda has been trying for a little bit to get in. All right, people. All right, here we go.
Old, and I remember the Kerner report and how much I talked about two nations separate and unequal. And along that line, we got to the newsrooms of this country painting a picture that excluded people like us. And then things got better. I got a job, though people in my grad school class when I graduated complained that the Black people were getting all of the jobs. But anyway.
They still say that.
It's a surplus visibility. So here comes Black Lives Matter, and here comes DEI, which somebody said yesterday, it's DIE. And I feel like we just keep going through the same cycles, and that's coupled with what has happened in the business. When I came into print journalism at the Daily News had 200,000 circulation. It was growing. When I left, things were starting to go in the direction that they've gone. So I have a couple of questions. One, in terms of diversity, is it ever going to be possible under any circumstance, even if the stock market went through the roof and suddenly became so affluent that everybody would pay $100 a week for the news? Will it ever be possible to institutionalize diversity in news coverage and reporting? If indeed it's last hired, first fired, forever and ever amen, that seems to me it can never happen. And then the other thing, besides that question, is I have a mentee at Columbia Journalism School, place I graduated from. more than 15 years ago, mentee at the J School. Sometimes I feel like, how dare you tell this young woman to go into journalism?
Mm-hmm.
Do you tell people to go into journalism? Your nephew came to you, would you tell him, yeah, great business? So those two things, how do we break the cycle so that we don't have to have DEI over and over and over again?
Yeah. Yes.
And why go into the business?
Can I just add that it's only 6% of reporting journalists that are Black today?
On your first one, that remains the aspiration. On the last hired, first fired, that's no longer the case. There is no seniority clause in the guild contract. Hasn't been since 2016 or 2017. But that remains an aspiration. On whether I would encourage people, yes. I mean, this is what we do. Has always been important. It is more important now than it has ever been. The industry is challenged in many ways, but the mission of the journalists, to chronicle the issues of the day as completely as possible, to hold elected officials accountable. That is inherently an important mission, and I would argue a noble one. And I am always encouraging people to become journalists for that reason.
I think they have so many more skills now, don't they? Gave me, like
Yes, right. And the good part is,
you're a good reporter.
I've been a news manager for 25 years. The journalists that come out of journalism school now are better prepared than I have ever seen.
Is that because they know how to?
I think the journalism schools, Temple being a very good example, do an excellent job training journalists and providing them with real life experiences and all the skills that they need. I went to a Lane Masters in Journalism program where I didn't learn anything. The journalism programs that, either the undergraduate level or the master's level are really highly evolved, practical, and comprehensive. And, we see the benefits of that in the young journalists that are coming out.
But the path to getting a master's in journalism is actually cut off for the majority of children in this school system because we have a failing school system. And my issue with the Inquirer over a number of years, that for the most part, your reporting doesn't reflect the problems in the school system, that over 70% of the children are actually failing. You talk about the 30%, and maybe you went up to 32%, and consider that something of some kind of breakthrough. When are you going to start to report the real problem in the school system so your mission will help to force the school district to do better by our children? Because our children are not going to be the next reporters based upon these marks. And it used to be that you actually put the testing scores in the paper. At some point, it was taken out. Most parents don't even know that A that a child got in North Philadelphia is not comparable to what he got in the school that the school district divided in half. One half is for the Black children from Franklin, and the other half is for science. I thought the city was going to blow up over that. It was basically nobody even got upset because they don't even understand what's happening. And I would think one of the missions of the Inquirer would be to tell that story because that's critical to everything else we talk about in terms of homelessness, crime, healthcare. If you're not educating your base, you're not going to have anything more than a city that's failing on a lot of levels.
I really strongly disagree with what you just said.
I'm a parent.
Well,
I have thought.
Allow me.
Yes.
Allow me. The reporter that we have covering the school system in Philadelphia is exceptionally talented and does a terrific job holding the school system accountable.
I think you may find a difference of opinion, and that's why it's important to talk.
We will disagree on that, and that will be the end of the discussion.
Let me just say this too before you leave. You know, in fact, Linda and I just did a panel Saturday, and the one point I'm making is that people really want to get together and talk. They're angry, they're scared, and all of that. And I think this is an opportunity for the Inquirer to think about doing some outreach with folks. And if we can be helpful with that, we're willing to do so. But I think one of the challenges the Inquirer has, you just can't be turning out the news and the features and think people are going to pick it up as a business. And I don't know about the suburbs. I lived in the suburbs for a very short time, and I moved back into a city. But city people are talking amongst themselves, and they're listening to radio, and I think this is an opportunity for the Inquirer to be part of the conversation that's going on in a lot of these communities. And right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
Maybe they don't care.
Maybe you don't care.
I agree with Mike. I really do.
And thank you, Gabe,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Like to invite you, come on, throw it off the hall monitor, whatever you like. Just let me know.
Okay. Solomon Jones beat me to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are my days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so warm, covering so good. It's so warm.
Okay. Do we have any other business?
I was going to ask, I think Dick Prince is with us from journalism. How are you doing, sir? You want to talk a little bit? What do you think?
Hear you.
Can't hear you, Rich.
Richard.
Well, I'm trying to report on this, and I think it's this is interesting, and I'm learning a lot about Philadelphia. But I think one point that is missed here, and is missed in a lot of this discussion, not just in Philadelphia, but a lot of places, people seem to think that the newspaper is only for people in the city limits. And they forget that now in the age of the internet, the newspaper is for everyone around the country who wants to subscribe. And for the print edition, it also covers the suburbs. But I don't hear that mentioned very often.
We know we got suburbs here.
I know, but it's not discussed. Everybody talks about the percentage of Black people in Philadelphia. But what about the Black people and white people and other people in the suburbs who also read the newspaper?
That's right, Richard.
Many of the issues are replicated. They're not just specific to one city. Education
is
exactly. So please, can we stop talking about, well, the city is such and such percent Black, and so therefore the Philadelphia Inquirer should be such and such percent Black, because this is not just about one city.
Well, when they talk about the mayor and all the Black elected officials, it becomes very central to their dialogue. So
yeah, but the mayor doesn't govern the suburbs.
No, but we focus on what's going on in the city because that's where we live. But you'll find the same problems in other city centers.
Yes.
Can I say something?
People are coming back to the city.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know.
Okay, my name's Robert DePore, and I'm white, and I'm 78. And I actually at one time, I think it was 1970, I actually wrote for a Black newspaper in Charleston, South Carolina, because I was South Carolina's only white radical. And so I've been in the civil rights movement for a long time. The first African American to get the Medal of Honor in the Vietnam War was in my squad. I carried him out, not so that 50 or 60 years later, this conversation could still be going on. And I run a nonprofit. And one of the things that we've done is distribute refurbished computers to people that can't afford to buy new ones. primarily to African American families. And we've put together the elementary school statistics for every state capital, school by school, by race, by subject, If you would like a copy of that, my email address is teamchildren@teamchildren.com. Hopefully, before I'm out of here, this conversation will have evolved to a higher level. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the struggle you've been through, and whatever I can do to forward the conversation.
Thanks for being with us.
I mean,
Is there any other business?
I wanted to make a point, guy. That all I understand what that gentleman. I understand. I understand.
Briefly, please. We need to go, so keep it brief.
I understand what that gentleman have said. You are telling. You didn't say other people briefly, but as soon as I speak, you're telling briefly. Yes. I understand what that other gentleman just said. What I'm saying is that all these cuts are happening now. All this cut at the Philadelphia Inquirer is happening now when all these other cuts are happening. And the Inquirer is a for-profit company, by the way. It's not a non-profit. But so I understand what he's trying to say, but it's disingenuous. All this is happening when all these cuts is happening and all this attack is happening on black voices and everything black is okay. So it's easy to it's difficult to say anything else.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there food left? I hope. Good. Anybody else?
Thank you. Can you ask people what they thought was accomplished today?
You asked?
Oh.
And I try to put this as diplomatic.
Don't be diplomatic. It's late now.
Well, don't start now.
I have been involved in some form of this particular fight, this particular news organization, from the moment I walked out of Temple University, 1992. And unfortunately, I see some change, but I don't see a lot of change. And I'm at the point now where, for me personally, and for a lot of the people with whom I interact, we have largely given up on the changes that folks would like to see ever happening. And we're going our own way, coming up with news sources that talk about stuff that is germane to this city that no one seems to have the time to cover. And that, because this is, it is what it is, and it has been this way for a while. While I appreciate Mr. Escobar, taking our letter from SPJ and, listening to us and listening to our questions, while I appreciate that, there are forces at play, particularly financial forces, because the one question I was going to ask him was, did they apply for a Press Forward grant? Press Forward is an organization that is funding local media and giving pretty decent sized grants. Hall Monitor got one. We got $100,000 for our little startup radio station /video. So I'm pretty sure the Inquirer could have gotten a fairly nice cut of that money too, because it's local media. And, I was going to ask if they bothered to apply. My hope is that they do apply, because if this is a problem that we have been talking about, and it was a problem that we were talking about even before I walked out of Temple University in 1992, if it's been going on that long, it might be time to do something really radical to solve it. I don't know what that is, but
it's always been time to support Black media. And I think that we have been so focused on being part of white media, we haven't supported Black media. We have Scoop here, and how many of us support Scoop?
Let's say that louder to the people in the back. Black press here. Say that louder for the people in the back. The Black press, we've been here for a long time, forever, and one of my goals is to make sure that we are not, that we're a first option. and we're not a fallback. And so that is really a very, very big point that I constantly make, is that we are included in the equation, and people know and understand that people who work for the Black press and for Black-owned media, we are just as talented. We are not less than. And so making sure that we are a first option is a priority of mine.
Can I say something? I know most of y'all don't know me. I'm Kiara Santos. I'm actually here with the Tribune right now. I'm covering the story tomorrow. I'm Kensington born. Been here my entire life. Went to Drexel. I've written on me in the Inquirer from 3 years ago. I love the Tribune. It gave me my first step. I know it's given a lot of journalists in the city also their first step. There is no growth at all. If anything, agree. I feel like I
agree.
My lovely bosses are just sweeping the carpet underneath me every single chance. I had the chance to cover the debate. No. I got a chance to cover my own backyard. No. I got a chance to cover the homeless population. No. Sit at that desk, rewrite a press release. I have not been able to grow. So I look here at the Inquirer, which has resources, and then I see that they are cutting off the community engagement desk. To me, I just turned 25 last week. That to me just tells me I need to go work at the visitor center, or I need to start making TikToks.
Don't do it.
I love journalism. I really did.
Have you ever applied for a job at the Inquirer?
We're waiting on a response right now.
You should have told them. You should have told her.
I didn't want to make it about me. I didn't want to make it about
Make it about you. It's your moment.
He's working right now.
You do both.
He's working. I need a job.
You should follow up with an email to Gabe.
I don't want to make it about
it. Look, this is your moment. You can make it about you.
Later. Yeah.
And email Gabe.
All right, we're gonna stop here. We are live. We were live, and I'm gonna stop here. There is nothing to be had. There's nothing to be said. I am disappointed with the way this meeting was conducted. And I'm going.
When I'm sitting here,
I'm
hearing
going to
Escobar talk, I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is a straight dud.
This is a ridiculous meeting. Sorry. The NABJ had a meeting, fine, great, and they bring other people. Absolutely ridiculous. First of all, what plans? Let him answer the question. What plans do you have? You said, we will ensure that they publish the stories. Jerry, who started this paper, when he started the Philadelphia Inquirer way back then, he said that journalism was in financial crisis. And he said that Philadelphia is the future of a free press. Philadelphia. Okay. And then they went ahead and started a for-profit paper. Ridiculous. Lenfest started a for-profit paper. Now, who's gonna cover community voices? Who is gonna cover community voices? The Philadelphian, a local newspaper established for that. I mean, there's no dynamic. Then again, are Philadelphians reading paper? The suburbs they read, are they reading in Philadelphia? That's the next thing. Is there a market? I'm a businessman. I'm not making any money. I mean, first of all, are we encouraging people to read? People not even reading. So that's the next thing. So maybe we are talking too much. We need to sit down and we have to have a proper discussion. I have to get him on the show. We're going to end here. We were live. We were live. We were actually live listening to the NABJ. But there's nothing more. And we will end the live recording. Thank you for watching the YouTube channel. It was on Zoom, and we decided to just share it for you. We're going to end the stream now.